All right, everyone. Jeremy Knopf here with another episode of the Public Relations Declassified Livestream. So got a couple of great topics we're going to unpack here today. The first one is a new little PR crisis that recently popped up, and the company is so far not handling it very well. We're going to talk about Yeti, what I'm now calling the abominable PR crisis. So for a little bit of context here, I'll give you guys a quick overview of the situation. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video for you guys, kind of breaking down the situation a little bit deeper. But the short version of the story here is somebody had placed an order with a relatively benign conservative message to be engraved on some Yeti tumblers, mugs. And the order went through. And then once it went through, it was canceled. And basically Yeti told them, oh, we don't do any political messaging. Okay, fair enough. Then the people who were told, no, they can't have that. They're not going to have political messages. They went ahead and created a political message on the other side of the spectrum and put that order through. And lo and behold, it went through. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a video here with somebody talking about it, but also then the original people who had placed the order. And let's take a look at how that played out.
Yeti canceled a conservative order for a custom conservative mug because it said conservative women on it. Originally, with this organization, they had allowed these orders to go through, no problem. They ordered these in the past, there was no issues. But this year, when they placed an order that said, again, conservative women, Yeti responded after accepting the order. They responded again and said, actually, we've canceled your order. Sorry, it says political language. We don't do that. We can't do that. That breaks our policies. So the organization saw that and thought, I wonder if they would apply that same logic if it said something liberal or progressive on it. So they tested the theory this week and they ordered something that said progressive on it and the order went through. Well, would you look at that? Okay, listen to this.
After our recent Yeti order got canceled, people were wondering, and they were asking us if Yeti's policies were really biased against conservatives, or if Yeti would apply their ban on, quote, political language equally, even to non-conservative groups.
We were giving them the benefit of the doubt, but Yeti failed us.
2 of our students took it upon themselves to order another Yeti cup with the words, Proud Texas Progressive.
Proud Texas Progressive. That sounds just as political as saying conservative women. Progressive, conservative. It's the same thing. Yeti.
And it was delivered. It was here last night, and here it is. Same company, same process, same everything, except for this progressive order sails through, while our conservative one got canceled.
Okay, so that proves it, everyone. We gave Yeti a shot. Maybe their policies were fair. Maybe they just really didn't want to talk about anything political. They really just wanted to stay out of it. They don't. Fact check, false. End of story. Great job for doing the test, girls. Great job.
All right. So the backlash from that was pretty instant and pretty severe. The brand's social media profiles are filled with negative comments. People complaining about the brand, saying they're never going to buy anything from it again. I took a look through some of their Instagram, their X, their Facebook, everything across the board. And their stock price is not doing so great right now either. So it's definitely not a good look. So the reality here is it's not a question of whether or not a brand can or should take a position. Brands absolutely can take a position on pretty much anything. Should they? Maybe. That's a case-by-case basis. It depends on the circumstances. The key here is you don't have to take a position on everything. And that's something that is a bit different. There was a period of time for a while where people were basically attacking brands if they weren't taking positions on certain things. And I don't think that's the right mindset either, right? A brand should be able to take whatever position they want. The key here is that if you do take a position, and every company is free to choose who they want to do business with, who they want to appeal to, right? Based on their own values. But those values have to align with the values of their audience, their target market. So if you do take a position, and like I said, keep in mind, you don't have to take a position on everything, right? We don't have to be involved in every single thing that goes on in the world. That's absolutely insane. But if you're going to take a position on something, first of all, you have to be transparent. If you have a particular belief, be open and public about that, and don't try to, play the gray area, beat around the bush, or be deceptive about it. If you believe in something and you're running your business based on those principles, then be transparent about that, because the people who agree with it, that's going to make them love your brand. The people who don't agree with it, it's going to make them hate your brand. And if they feel like they got duped, if they feel like you presented your company as one thing and then turned around and actually behaved in a manner that's not consistent with that, you're going to lose them forever. So, for example, you can't say we don't do political topics, we won't get involved in political topics, but then pick and choose and take certain political topics, right? That is a recipe for disaster, and you just can't go down that road. If you're going to take a topic on, then you have to be consistent in it, and you have to be transparent in it. I don't really care how a company operates. If they want to take a position on the conservative side, if they want to take a position on the liberal side, that's totally fine. But if you want to protect your brand, you have to be authentic and you have to be transparent so people know who they're dealing with. Because if they feel like if you haven't been honest with them, then there's going to be a lot of backlash, and people are going to walk away from your brand and very likely trash your brand as well. So right now, Yeti is dealing with the backlash of that, and rightfully so. This is just another example of how bad things can get if you're not authentic and transparent. Bud Light had, a similar situation. A lot of people have this misconception that, oh, well, it's a big company. They're giant. They're too big to fail. Everybody's going to just come back to them. That's not how it works. When people decide they're done with a brand, they're done with it. And, Bud Light thought that that's how it was going to play out. They thought that because they were dominant in the market, that everything would just blow over and it would go back to business as usual. Bud Light still has not recovered from the backlash that they faced years ago when they had their PR crisis. So they actually lost that dominant position. They've not been able to recover sales, and several other companies, brands had taken over. Now, Anheuser-Busch as a whole, which was the parent of Bud Light, they're still out there. They're still doing okay. But Bud Light is just basically dead in the water. And I don't know if Yeti is going to end up in the same situation, but there is a potential there. And it's important to remember that these are giant companies with multi-million, or in some case, multi-billion-dollar advertising and marketing budgets. They can weather the storm a lot better than you can with a smaller company. So it's even more critical if you've got a smaller business that you get this right, because your brand is the lifeblood of your company. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about PR in an AI world, right? What you need to know to survive the revolution. So there's been a lot of talk about AI, particularly as it relates to PR and how to use it when it comes to PR. There's a lot of right ways to use it. There's even more wrong ways to use it. And if you get it wrong, you really risk doing immense damage to your brand. So the first thing I'll talk about is what I would consider the most important way not to use AI, because it will absolutely hurt your brand, hurt your reputation, and impact your ability to get featured in the media. And that's going to have a significant effect on your overall reach, the trust that people have in your brand, and things like that. So the first thing you have to remember is never use AI to write your pitches. I cannot emphasize that enough, because first of all, we can almost always tell when something is written by AI. But the other problem there is AI does put a lot of bullshit out there, right? What I like to call AI slop. And so it's really easy to get something stupid ending up in your pitch that makes you look bad. And then that will affect not only that pitch, but future attempts, right? If that journalist has a bad impression of you and they feel like you used AI, or you did use AI and it's got something in there that makes you look stupid in some way, then they're not likely to look at your future pitches that you send after that either. And this is something a lot of people don't realize. Journalists are complaining about this a lot. You guys don't see it because you're not in that industry. You're not engaged with journalists. You're not in the private groups or the meetings or the events that they're at. But a lot of journalists are complaining about the use of AI in pitches. And I mean, look, they work with words for a living. They're writing, they're constantly creating content. They understand whether you used AI or not. And especially if something stupid ends up in it, right? These AI hallucinations. And I've got some good examples we're going to pull up here a little bit later. But in fact, you know what? I'm going to jump to some of those real quick. So there's this great account that I love that's popped up following some of the Google HCU update stuff. And they were highlighting some of the absolute gibberish that's showing up in Google's AIOs, right? The AI overviews. And these are what you see in the search results. When you search for something, and Google tries to give you kind of like a summary of everything kind of encapsulated into a tight little few paragraphs. And so I'm going to pull up a few of these. Basically, they ran this fun little experiment where they made up words, they made up phrases, and they went and did searches for it to see what Google would say about those made up, meaningless search terms, these phrases. So the phrase H to the B to the U meaning, right? And Google turned around and just made this up out of the blue and claimed that it was something related to lyrics from a Colby Calais song, which is absolutely not the case. We've got this other one here, throw down the glove, or the glove above. And Google completely made up a definition to this phrase that is not real. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing that means anything. Tube salad is another great one. And they came up with this medical terminology about it that, again, does not exist. And then Google eyes refers to the look of wide-eyed amazement, admiration, or enchantment. And none of these things are real. So a lot of times these, give me just 1 second here, I'm moving a screen. These terms or these answers that the AI gives you are completely made up. And this happens a lot with statistics, data, anything where there's specific information involved. A lot of times Google will just make stuff up. And this is true of not just Google. Google just happens to be the absolute worst. But this is true of all of these AI platforms. I've seen it happen with Grok. I've seen it happen with ChatGPT. I've seen it happen where I would put in information, asking ChatGPT or Grok questions about myself. And it would say, that I was an airborne ranger in the Army, which I never was. So a lot of times it will pull this information and just completely make things up. And what happens there is if you rely on any of this AI slop in your pitches, you're now giving a journalist information that's not correct. Now, that's going to go one of a few different ways. One, they may look at it and they may take it at face value and they may include it in an article. So now they've cited you using information that is complete bullshit. It's made up. And that not only makes you look bad, but it also makes them look bad. And these are the kinds of things that journalists talk about behind the scenes. So other journalists will hear about this. That's going to severely hurt your chances of getting featured in the media by any journalist, not just that one. Because like I've said many times, there are these private groups where journalists talk and share these stories behind the scenes that you'll never see. So you could find yourself pitching and pitching and pitching and getting nowhere, having no idea why, and it was because you relied on AI. So that's one of the ways that this can go really badly. But think about the reputational damage there. So let's say you say a thing in your pitch that's not true, and then it gets featured somewhere, and then it gets picked up somewhere else, and maybe someone else starts talking about it. You've probably got some competitors who aren't real fond of you. What happens when they screenshot that and they use that as evidence that you're not qualified, you're not competent? They can start gobbling up business from you because they have demonstrative proof that you're not as competent as you say you are. So this can spiral out of control pretty quickly and pretty easily. And it's happening to a lot of people. and it will have a significant impact on you, both in the short term and the long term. So some of the ways you can use AI effectively, though, is analyzing a journalist's content, for example. So a lot of the AI systems, I know ChatGPT does, I know that Grok does, Perplexity probably does, I can't say for certain. I know that I think Lyndon is on here watching the live stream. Lyndon, if you could drop us a comment and let me know for sure if Perplexity does live information like that. So what you can do is you can basically take that particular journalist's link to their author page, which then of course lists all of their articles. You can have AI analyze their content and get a sense for what they talk about, what their positions on things are, how they view the world. And that gives you tremendous insight so that when you pitch them, that pitch is going to be laser focused on what is going to appeal to them, what they are likely to accept, and what they're going to say, hey, yeah, this is a great pitch. I love this. Let's include you. AI is a great tool for analyzing massive amounts of content like that so that you can figure out exactly what's going to appeal best to them in that pitch. You can also use AI for finding media outlets. So we all know, the major outlets that everybody talks about. You've got Entrepreneur, you've got Inc., you've got Forbes, Fast Company, the major entrepreneurial outlets. You've got your local media outlets that you probably know, your Channel 8, your Channel 10 in your local area, whatever. And then you've got trade publications. Every industry is different. So for search engine optimization, for example, you've got Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, several others. Every industry has its own trade publications. But in all three of these categories, I promise you there is a shitload of other outlets out there that you don't know about and that you're probably not going to easily find by just doing a basic Google search. I have talked in some of the previous episodes about some of the search commands that you can use to find them, but you can also go into AI and have that platform tell you what outlets are out there. And keep in mind, these platforms, they're out there digging the internet all over the place and finding all kinds of things that you would probably never find as a person going through a search engine, right? Because they're crawling the web. They're crawling all these different links to find different things. So this is a great way to find media outlets on various topics. And you may even find media outlets that are not specific to that industry or not something you would normally consider, but they're covering a topic, but maybe they don't have a ton of content about it. That could be a great opportunity to pitch that outlet on that particular topic. And you already know they like to publish that content, but maybe that's not their core focus. That's not something that would generally come up in a search engine in the traditional sense. So this is a really good use of AI where you go in and you use it to find other outlets to potentially get featured in. And the cool thing is, the further down the rabbit hole that you go, the more likely you are to get featured in those publications because they don't have everyone beating down their door trying to get featured in there. So that's a great way to use it. Another way that I like to use it is identifying trends. So I've talked a lot about leveraging something called newsjacking, where you're basically leveraging something that's already going on in the media or social media and using that as a catalyst to get your story into the media. So there's a lot of places that you can find this data, but AI is looking at a larger pool of data than you ever could possibly track. And so you can use that to analyze the media. You can use that to analyze social media and see what people are talking about. What are they getting excited about? And then use that in your pitches. So Grok, for example, if you go into Grok and ask it, what's trending on X, for example, you can do the same thing in ChatGPT. You go in and you look for these trending topics and then find a way to connect those to your industry. That's a really good way to keep on top of things. And you can even set up automated systems where with ChatGPT, if you've got the paid version, you can set up, I think they call it tasks, but basically it will automate. So you can have it, like I've got one that monitors the top trending topics on X, and it will pull this for me every day at 9 a.m. So every morning I will get an email at 9 a.m. from ChatGPT with a list of all of the trending topics. Now, I can then go into those trending topics, look for opportunities, and you have to pay attention to the context of these trending topics, because sometimes it's really easy to screw it up. Entenmann's did an interesting mistake, not directly related to PR. This was more of a social media thing, technically still in the PR realm, but they jumped on a trending hashtag back when hashtags were a big thing about, I can't remember what the hell it was, but they jumped on a trending topic, trending hashtag, and leveraged that to try and get a bunch of eyeballs on a tweet to, promote their donuts. And the problem was that particular hashtag was related to the Casey Anthony thing. So it really backfired on them in a big way. So if you're going to be looking at the trending topics, don't just look at the topic itself, but also dig deeper, look into the context behind it. Why is it trending, right? I posted something, I think it was yesterday, saying something to the effect of, anytime Kanye West is trending, just do yourself a favor and don't look into it. That's another perfect example. He definitely was trending again recently, and it was not for anything good. That's an example of something you definitely don't want to leverage. You don't want to try and jump on that and use that to create additional visibility, because it was around a pretty repulsive topic. So use it to find trending topics, and then go look at the context of it, and then go from there. But then beyond that, we also have to look at making sure that we are included, we're cited in these LLMs, large language models, right? The data and the programming behind each of these AI platforms, whether it be Grok, Perplexity, DeepSeek, OpenAI, whatever. So most people, if you go and you search your name in any of these AI platforms, it's probably not going to have a lot of information about you, right? They look at things like social media, of course, but there's a lot of other things they look at first. And if certain signals aren't in place, then you're probably not going to show up in these AI platforms. So, for example, mine is up here. If we search for my name, it's got a lot of really good information about me. There are some things that are not quite right, but every time that I look at it, it's getting more and more refined. Dr. Kaslow, who a lot of you guys have heard on the show several times before, she is listed in there as well, right? So there's a lot of factors that go into this. One of them is schema does help play a role. And basically schema is the code behind the scenes. It's a very specific format of code. It's basically JavaScript in a JSON format that's used on your website to give certain information about you as an entity, right? So don't think of your name as a keyword. Think of your name as an entity that you're in, basically. And that's what schema helps platforms like any of these AI platforms. Google even used it in their regular search results for quite a while, still do. But basically, it helps these systems to understand entities. Social media is another factor, like I mentioned before, but it's not just a matter of existing on social media, because if that were the case, everybody would be in there. Followers matter, but engagement matters more. So if you've got, 50,000 followers and they're all bots, then that's not really going to help you when it comes to showing up in these AI platforms. If you've got 10,000 followers, but you've got a very engaged follower base, that's going to have a lot more impact, because these AI bots that are going out scanning the web, they're going to see that activity. And that's a sign that you're relevant, that you're important. So engagement is going to have far more impact than followers. So what you want to do here is build a strong brand, create content, and actively engage with your audience. Books can be another great one. So if you've got one or more books published, then you're going to also have an author page on Amazon, and you likely will end up in some other places as well. You may end up in Google Books, you may end up in some other places, but those are considered authoritative sources. So when these bots for the AI platforms go out and find that, That's another good sign. That indicates that you're knowledgeable, that you're authoritative and reputable. YouTube can be another good one, but again, the same applies here as it does to social media. It's not just having a channel, it's not just having a bunch of followers, but are people active and engaged? Are they watching your content? Are they leaving comments? Are they including your videos in other web pages? All of these things play a role. Podcasts as well. So the key here is syndication. It's not enough just to, let's say you've got your podcast hosted on Libsyn. That's a good start, but that's not enough. So you want to make sure that you're also syndicated out. You're in iHeartRadio and, Stitcher and all the other platforms. And nowadays there's probably hundreds of different platforms. I haven't really stayed as up to date on that as I used to be, but there's a lot of tools to get your podcast syndicated out through a number of sources. And there's also a lot of other websites that basically act as aggregators. Heroes Media Group is a great one. They've got a great network of veteran themed podcasts, right? So that's a great example of syndication where, you've got your podcast and it's hosted on Libsyn. You've probably got the episodes hosted on your own website as well. But now let's say you're out here in Heroes Media Group's website as well. That's our friend Adam Bird, who's a member of the community. Then that's another positive sign, right? Because these aggregators, they're not just putting every podcast up because that bandwidth costs money. So if they're putting a podcast up on their system, that's another sign that it's useful, that people find it useful. They're engaging with it. They're downloading it. It's the kind of thing they're talking about. So that's another good sign when it comes to these AI platforms. Media features is a key part of this. So there's a big difference between legit media outlets and some of these other, what I would call shadier pay-to-play outlets or the outlets that are created just to create the impression of authority, but they're really bullshit. I've talked about that Music Observer one, for example, which basically tries to mimic Rolling Stone, but it's purely a garbage pay-to-play website where people can pay like $100 and just be featured in there, but it gets no traffic. Nobody knows who the hell it is. It's not a real outlet. It's just basically a content mill. It's garbage, right? So getting featured in those types of publications do not help you. But when you're featured in legitimate, authoritative media outlets, let's say Newsmax, CNN, Fox Business, anything like that, that's a huge signal to these artificial intelligence platforms that you are somebody relevant and important and authoritative. And that plays a big role in getting you featured in those outlets. Getting you featured in these LLMs, whether it be OpenAI, Grok, whatever. And then a knowledge panel is another great one. So this is really cool. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a screenshot here for you guys. If you aren't familiar with it, what a knowledge panel is, this is when you search for a person and Google considers them to be an authoritative person. Then you'll see this little thing where, across the top, you've got all these pictures. You've got a couple of cards with maybe some other websites or some social posts or things like that. And then there's a little bar down the side. And that also includes links to that person's social media profiles. So you see Paul Lizelle here, friend of the community, great guy, super smart real estate and crypto guy. Great human as well. But he's been featured in the media several times. He's kind of got a semi-recurring role on a TV show talking about crypto. He's been in a few major media outlets as well. It helps that he's got a very unique name. If you've got a very common name, this will be a lot harder to hit. But culmination of all of those, but the key feature being featured in the media. So this is something that's triggered algorithmically. You can't apply for it. There's not a form you fill out. Google is out here looking for signs on the internet that indicate that this person is authoritative. If that is the case, then they will trigger a knowledge panel like this. Now, if this is happening, if you have a knowledge panel for your name, then generally that's a sign that you are authoritative, which will be more likely that you're going to end up in the AI platforms as well. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about something that a lot of people seem to have a tough time with, and that is criticism. We're going to talk about why you need to treat all criticism as valuable feedback. Now, this could be a little tough sometimes, especially, for us who are, smaller business owners, and our business is kind of our baby, and we're getting out there, we're creating content, we're getting in front of people, we're, putting our heart and soul out there. And then some asshole comes up and just, calls you a scammer, or, says that you don't know what you're talking about, this, that, and the other. And look, we're all going to get criticized. Most people's reaction to that, unfortunately, is to get defensive, right? Oh, well, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm an expert at this, and I know what I'm talking about, and I'm the one, and you don't know what you're saying. And that's always the wrong response, because what happens is once you start getting defensive, it makes it seem like you've got something to prove. So I came across an interesting video a couple days ago. This was on TikTok. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards.
One thing about me is if a girl is up in my comments tagging a man to try to ask if what I'm talking about is credible or correct information, to check with them, I will block that person so fast. I'm a certified personal trainer. I'm a fitness coach. I'm specifically a glute specialist. If you are up in my comments tagging a man, why? Because I'm a woman, I can't be credible? Okay.
All right. So this young lady clearly got very emotional about the situation and lashed out a bit. The reality is we're all going to get criticized. And if you lean on credentialism, right? I'm a certified this, I have an MBA in that. That's not reinforcing anything. That's just showing that you are not confident in your actual knowledge. That's showing that you're insecure. So if somebody is coming online and they don't trust you, it doesn't mean they're just an asshole. It also doesn't mean that they're not an asshole. Trolls are part of the internet. They're going to be here forever. They've always been here. They're always going to be here. But if somebody is coming online and they're dropping a comment or, saying something about you, what that means is they don't know you, they don't trust you, and you haven't demonstrated your expertise yet. So getting on here and just telling them that they're wrong does not do anything for you. It actually hurts your brand. So I went through a bit of a journey on the other side of this as well, where, pretty much from the time I got out of the Marine Corps, I ran my own business. And for most of that time, it was a full service digital marketing agency. And, I had built a reputation. I was known as an expert at digital marketing. Well, and traditional pre-digital as well, right? So I was routinely cited in the media. People knew who I was. But then when that health crisis occurred and I disappeared for several years, I basically started over. So when I came back out into it, I couldn't just get up there and be like, oh yeah, everybody used to know who I was. I was in this thing 5 years ago or whatever. Like none of that mattered. I was starting from zero. So I had to get out there and demonstrate my knowledge. And I did that through public relations and fairly quickly became known as an expert again. Particularly at that time with a specialization in search engine optimization. A bit later after that, I pivoted to PR, and that transition was a bit easier and a bit faster because I already had that foundation built where I was known as an expert in SEO, and a broader, in the broader sense, also marketing in general. But I had that to lean on. And then when I pivoted to PR, by consistently demonstrating my knowledge and expertise there, then, that went pretty well, pretty quickly. But it wasn't because I was up here telling people that I was an expert. It was because I was demonstrating it. I was showing them through the content that I was creating, through the presentations that I was giving on stage, through the knowledge that I was sharing with people. So in order to do this, you have to consistently demonstrate your expertise by creating content, by getting third-party validation, and by responding properly. So if you're getting defensive, that creates doubt. think about it like this. If your name's Tom and somebody comes up and calls you Steve, are you going to be like, well, no, I'm not Steve. Don't you know who I am? Like, no, that's insane. You're just going to be like, no, I'm not Steve. I'm Tom. You're not going to get defensive about it. Same applies to general knowledge about your industry. If you're saying a thing and they're criticizing you, you respond with facts. You respond with information. You respond with knowledge. And that is what demonstrates your expertise. And then keep in mind that all of this engagement drives the algorithm up. So the positive people, we love those, but we often hate the negative people. I don't really care. I love it all because even the negative people are driving engagement, right? They're going to comment something. If it's stupid, generally they're going to look stupid, but it gives me an opportunity to further demonstrate my knowledge. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to troll them back a little bit, right? That's a lot of fun. But all of that engagement drives the algorithm to put your content in front of more people. So I look at it as a positive. If you're out here commenting and then somebody else is criticizing you, it's a good opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge. And then they're also probably going to continue replying back to you. So you get this back and forth going. Well, now the algorithm wants to show all of your content to more people. So you win even further. So how do we respond? There's a few different ways that we can respond to negative criticism. The first is to ignore it, and that's easy. There's pros and cons to that, right? If you've got mainly negative criticism because maybe you haven't built an audience yet, then it's probably not a good idea to ignore it. If most of your engagement is positive and you've got a few negative people and they're criticizing you in a way that doesn't really give you the ability to respond in a positive way, right? Like, let's just say they call you a scammer. There's probably not a lot of value in responding to that because you're not going to change anyone's mind. You're certainly not going to change their mind. But if they're saying, hey, I think you're wrong about this, well, now that's a chance to kind of start engaging in the comments and get dialogue going. If you've got a really good audience, though, like let's say you have an engaged and loyal audience, a lot of times you'll find that they come to your defense in the comments as well. And then that further milks that engagement. So it's a win all the way around. You could educate them depending on the circumstances, but if you have a lot of these people and you've only got so much time, that may not be an option. The other option is, and I love this one, is to troll them back. Make fun of them. If they are saying something ridiculous, then say something ridiculous back, or just drop a GIF, one of those animated GIFs or an emoji. Just mess with them. It could be a lot of fun. And, you get them all spun out and, then they want to just keep coming and commenting on all your shit. So I've had that happen several times where I would come out here and I would troll these people back, and then they would just come unhinged and they would come and comment on all of my stuff, not just that particular post. And that created a lift for the account as a whole, where I started to see a whole bunch of new followers popping up. I started to see other people attacking them, mocking them. So trolling them can be fun. You don't have, look, we're not some, old British guy who has to be all stiff and stuffy all the time. We can have fun with this. So enjoy it. Play with the trolls. I want to show you guys a really good example. I don't know if she's on with us right now, but Jen De La Fave got a little bit of troll action not too long ago, and I really loved her response. It was a series of images that she created that basically took this kind of crappy situation and turned it into a really great piece of content. So check this out. So it says, this is a scam. Yes, people say that to us. Here's why you should keep posting on Facebook. Her next image in it was this. So basically she's here mocking, laughing at these people who are trolling her. Now, for a little bit of context here, Jen and her husband, Joe, are great real estate coaches. Known them for a few years, super knowledgeable, and they've helped a lot of people. They've got a very active audience, and a lot of the audience came in and hyped them up and, kind of made fun of the trolls as well. But this was a great example. She just kind of ran through some of these and turned it into this really cool piece of content. And let's see, looks like we missed one there. But and then here, so here's what I love about the whole thing. She ended it with a question, which of course is going to inspire other people to pop in and answer that question. So this is a great way to build up some engagement. And remember, every comment is an opportunity to demonstrate your expertise, your personality, and that gives you the ammunition that you need to build more trust, to drive more engagement, and to grow your audience. So the way Jennifer approached this was great. It was just a really good way to kind of lightheartedly poke fun at the situation, but also in that they highlighted, and the one screen that appeared to be missing was actually a comment from somebody else who was raving about how amazing they were and how they had helped her, that particular individual. So it's a great way to really hit all of those, right? You're trolling the guy a little bit, or the guys, girls, whatever. The people who are trolling you, you're trolling them back. You're creating kind of a fun, lighthearted piece of content, and in the process, demonstrating your expertise. And, you know, like I said, that's not only showing your expertise, but it's also showing your personality. And that's what's going to attract people to you, because the things that are going to repel certain people are the same things that are going to attract other people. And this is a great way to do that. So kudos, Jen. All right. We're going to close out the segment here with Jeremy's PR PSA. And that is that authenticity in all form of communication is the key to building a loyal and engaged audience. And that's critical to build authority status. So in everything that we do, we have to be authentic. We have to be who we are. We don't have to worry about trying to appeal to everybody. We just have to worry about being who we are. And that's going to attract the right people. And just as important, it's going to repel the wrong people. So that's going to be a wrap for today, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this episode. If you're not already in the Facebook group, love it if you go ahead and pop in there, join the group. This is where we share the PRD live stream, as well as lots of other great free information. And that's a wrap for today, guys. Catch y'all in the next episode.